Right, just a quick video actually to show what I've done with the binnacle on the DeLorean. If you remember, or probably from looking at the different pictures, this was a bit of a mess. I've spent quite a bit of time trying to get it to look better, to actually make it, because it was quite cracked, and fill in the bits and pieces, particularly on the back here, where in fact you can still see there's a little bit of a lump just there, but it was quite badly cracked all over here. One of the sort of standard things that tends to happen with DeLorean binnacles is that they just end up getting cracked by the sun over in the US of A. But what I've decided to do is cover it with this kind of vinyl stroke leather. I think this is actually vinyl. It's got the stitching on it, which is like the original prototype version of the DeLorean. And I've stretched it over the binnacle. Now, this was a real task and a half. I've got a few pictures that show it sort of midway through, but this was really difficult. I was going to document it, but to be honest with you, spray glue, vinyl, stretching, and camera foam definitely does not mix. So I sort of avoided doing that. And what I do have, at least, is this now stretched over it, and it's looking pretty damn good. I'm really pleased with it. I mean, if I lift this bit up, I'm quite pleased with the fit around the edges here. I mean, I know it's not absolutely perfect with the stitching, but I'm really pleased with it. I think it looks really, really good. It comes down into the basement here. It's nice and tight over it. If I turn it over, place it down carefully, you can see that it's been wrapped around and stretched around the corners in particular. These bits were particularly difficult to get everything out. Now there's little bits here which are still rocked up, but because you've got a good depth of the dashboard, this should hopefully disappear. And then obviously it's been stuck down into the actual foam, the original foam on the underside, and I'm thinking it's looking pretty good, almost to factory spec. One of the things which was particularly difficult was to fit this black inner piece, which is very, very difficult. I mean, I use contact adhesive, but mine didn't really fit particularly well originally. It was a bit of a pain in the neck. It wasn't very keen on the original one. It seemed to be a little bit too big, or the binnacle itself had shrunk, so it's been a really tight fit, which does mean that with covering it, it's actually made it even worse. But I have managed to get it to stick down. I would have preferred this part to have gone further into the actual binnacle. And if you look on here, you can see that there is a little bit of a gap. There's a bit of a shortfall, which I think I'm going to have to cut back before I put the dials and everything back in. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. It's certainly a million times better than it was before. And I think the stitching really adds to it. One final note. Some of you may notice that the stitching is not quite as bright and as white as it is on some of the pictures. What happened was there were a couple of areas that when I was gluing it down, some of the glue got on, it's taken the surface finish off. So what I've done is I've sprayed it with the same stuff that I've done the rest of the interior, which means that it also matches the interior really, really well. And I think actually having it so it's not quite so austere and quite obvious stitching, I think actually makes it a little bit better. But yeah, really, really pleased with it. And we'll be putting in the dials next, which are just over here. So we've got all the dials and etc. to go back in, and hopefully we should have that fitted back in the car pretty soon.